I want to introduce our first guest speaker tonight. And this gentleman I've known, I guess, for maybe 4 or so years. Yeah. I met Victor at a Google for Entrepreneurs event. And he at that time was a very fresh-faced exponent of social media coming from a training and agency background in Spain. We connected really well, have since become very good friends. Victor has worked at various agencies in Dubai leading social media strategy and development, and now finds himself at Your Social, which is a really good, solid, dedicated social agency which are based very close to here, maybe even next building perhaps, super close. And recently have been acquired. So watch this space. I'm sure these guys are going to do some really interesting, creative, and cutting-edge stuff in the times that follow, and I'll definitely be watching them closely. So I know we've got some really great content in store. I'd like to welcome up to the stage our first speaker, Victor Madueno.
Thanks everybody for coming today. I know it's the World Cup. It's kind of a tough moment. No big teams playing, right? Japan just played. So thanks, James. Yeah, we know each other for 4 years. I've been in the digital industry quite a lot. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about how social media has evolved over the last years. I don't know. I want to see a little bit your hands up because I feel there's a lot of agencies, but I want to see as well if there's any client so I can point out as well some stuff for you. So who's client side? Okay. Who's agency side? Yeah, agency life, guys. So I'm Victor. I'm a socialholic. I've been in social media for 12 years. And I feel I cannot really get rid of social media. It's something that I'm not going to talk about the basic stuff of social media because you have these events all over the place, and this is not for that. Let's say this platform is not to actually tell you really basic things. You can find them online, right? But when it comes to my journey, my personal journey on social media, I started with forums. Hello. ICQs, virtual world, second life. I don't know if you heard about that. Maybe I'm too old. No? Okay. I'm too old. So the point of this is social media has evolved quite a lot. And there's a kind of maturity phase that many businesses, not only agencies, because at the end you manage your social media as well to get exposure, but the client side, they should look into as a more consultancy phase. So I'm going to introduce a little bit who we are. We're going to go through the current state of what social media is today, what it's all about, without that, kind of basic stuff. And I'm going to take you really to that actionable content that is the maturity frameworks, how we work, how do we help other, let's say, brands to understand their journey through social media. I'm going to take you through 2 main maturity models. One is the social business, how your company, your brand can embrace social within, from the beginner stage to really a social business. And then I'm going to talk to you about social care maturity model. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's customer service done through social media. So it's not really rocket science. Then I'm going to introduce you 2 other models that we're working right now. One is the social intelligence model, and the other one is the community management model. Because at the end, we need to find processes to evolve, right? We as customers, we evolve, and brands as well. And because we are really in a situation where customers are evolving faster than brands need to really tackle this evolution or let's say, the maturity of their approach. And then I'm going to take you to one case study so you can really understand how do we do this, okay? To introduce ourselves, so we're Your Social as a social agency, but we belong to a bigger group that is called MERKLE. I don't know if you're familiar with MERKLE. It's performance, peoples-based marketing, and it belongs as well to Dentsu Aegis Network, that I'm sure you're familiar with that, right? So MERKLE, what we do is we help brands kind of the best brands in the world, let's say, to actually focus on people's-based marketing. We believe on how we can approach people one-on-one. It's not about cookies, proxies, and coding within the websites. It's about how can we talk to you one-on-one based on what you want, based on data. We collect data from you and we deliver to you the content that you really want to consume from us, or products, right? And obviously we're in a situation, and I'm sure the content, Alex will tell you a little bit about the content side of it, but we're going to a phase that we personalize even more with dynamic content. How can we actually trigger based on weather and tell you a specific message to you that you are in, let's say, Lebanon, and it's snowing, or you're going to actually Saudi that is actually boiling. And we can deliver from centralized platforms the same message, let's say, customized messages to whichever audiences we want to target. How do we do this? So we have, based on value and based on the maturity side of how clients are built, our agency services that is based on performance, so display, programmatic, paid social, search, and what we really, this is combined with creative, let's say strategy, creative, insights, and all the different disciplines that I will take you later. But then we have, in that maturity phase, we have marketing services that we can actually focus on evolving that, let's say, knowledge of brands within the digital ecosystem. I don't want to take you through the whole marketing solutions. I want to focus on what is social media and how can we evolve. So what we do is social data or insights, the strategy aspect of it. We create content, campaigns, we conceptualize for you. Then we do actually the community management side, or what we know about social media, is managing and moderating communities. Then obviously we do the advertising part, or what we call paid social advertising, and then the consultancy aspect of it. That is what you're going to see today. Yeah. So what's social media? Social media is all about. The current state of social media, everybody will say, it's about content. Content is the king. Well, I'm not going to talk to you about that, because it's already the king, will always be the king, and there's nothing, around that. What I will say, influencer marketing. Social media will be influencers, and how do you expose your brand? Well, it is, and with different regulations, and the UA getting a little bit tougher on that sense, it's a must. You need to. It's your brand. Really need to get that exposure through really relevant people. I would say more in a micro-influencer side, but it's not what I'm going to talk to you about. So what I want to talk to you is how the data that we create, it's actually exploding every year, even more. So 90% of the content that is out there on the internet has been created since 2016. I've been seeing over my 12 last years within the industry, people talking about this slide over and over again. And it was in 2010, if I don't remember wrong, it was the same amount of content was created from the beginning of the human race, from history, till 2010. And now we're 90% of content is created since 2016. That means that we're sitting on top of so much data that it gets really difficult to understand. How can we take that data and process it to take an actionable strategy or put some direction to it. So I'm going to really go into this kind of, for you to see a little bit the figures, how it's evolving from 12, 13, 14, the explosion on content, the explosion on data. If we move to 2017 and 18, you can see a little bit the metrics that are moving from one side to another. And it's actually not that exponential on 2017 to 2018, because the activity, the user activity is kind of decreasing within social media, but it's getting more stabilized, right? So right now we are 3.8 billion people on the internet, and on average we are pretty much everybody's on social media. What happens now is how can we reach with a personalized message to those people within brand guidelines, within what we want with our products, what we want to focus to the audiences, to the right audiences and right target audience. And this is where it comes, the actually freak out of everybody in the industry. How do I do this, right? So I would say in my day-to-day basis, we work with different disciplines within social media. You have influencer marketing, you have content marketing, performance marketing, promotional marketing. I even forget about it, permission marketing. I don't know if you're familiar with that part. It's all about GDPR. I'm not going to talk about that. I promise it to myself. Cool. Don't make questions about that, please. And then we have the predictive marketing side of it. How can we get all that data that we create and predict what the people would like from us? How can we create a necessity in the future based on data, on social data or social intelligence? Social media has been disrupting the way that people and brands communicate to each other and they get along with each other. But actually it's getting stronger nowadays. Storytelling, everybody will say, well, you need to actually create a nice story to tell to your audience. It's always been there. Campbell, it was there back in the 60s, creating a story for their consumers. Nowadays it's stronger, it's insanely stronger, the way that we need to create a story to tell in order for them to buy our products. There's so much noise out there. There's so many players out there that in a way for us to stand out, we need to tell a really compelling and viral story. But that's another discussion of the viral thing. There wasn't always like that. It was a time that there was text. It was the most popular way of telling that story, right? I don't know if you remember, maybe you were there. This was how it looked like before. Quite different than what we are. This is an evolution as well, a maturity of these platforms, right? They're progressing, they're evolving as we, as consumers or users, evolve. So if you see how social media, the launches of the different social channels, you see that pretty much everything was really kind of a decade ago. In the last few years, yeah, kind of the same, but different things have come out. Only Snapchat as a big differentiator, or let's say MERKLE or Periscopics, Periscopics. So it's more about the live streaming video as a unique platform that it wasn't there before. But if you see the last 2 years, there's really not much out there new for us to do. Vero, that it was really trendy last year, actually was launched in 2015, if I'm not correct, if I'm mistaken. But you have the Chinese, for example, that are actually combining all this user experience or customer experience within one platform, and that's what, for example, others are trying to replicate, or Facebook will try to replicate with WhatsApp in the future. Till here is the basics, right? So from now on, you've seen that there's an evolution of social media going from, let's say, really plain text-driven, and we're moving to a video platform, visual platform-driven, where people want to see and consume more storytelling from the brands, valuable content through really interesting people to follow that can tell us, that product works and save us some time actually going on reviews on, I don't know, Amazon or souk.com. So what I'm going to tell you now is how do we structure this evolution, this maturity phases. So we have the social business maturity framework, the digital one, or the social care one and the digital one. I'm going to focus on the social aspect of it. And this is not, we didn't create this. We're not the owners of this. It's Altimeter Group, who came up this concept back in the 2015. And here the region still, after 5 years in Dubai, working with KSA, with GCC in general, some Levant, I still see that people say social media is the new thing. It's not. I've been there more than 10 years, and I'm sure you've been there as well. So 2004 was the launch of Facebook, but before that, there were social gatherings within forums and other places. So they actually, how brands can tell stories where people get together to talk or discuss a social topic. This, if you combine the maturity models with how the organizations are built, then you can start working together with them and create a change within the organization. Okay? So you have 5 different, organizational models where you have decentralized, that I'm sure, because many of you are agencies, this is what you see nowadays in client sites. They're decentralized, they don't have an organization, everybody does their own thing, everybody has a decision. So how can we actually take those clients and move them to a more centralized approach, where you have some agency support, but they have an internal team? And how can you move even further than that? That's based on maturity. You need to train them, you need to actually help them and support them on a day-to-day basis, and help them grow and understand what are the benefits of, I don't know, maybe content, developers, media buying, social. But at the end of the day, there's not many other companies who are really doing multi-hub and spoke and holistic approach, for example. If you have to name, for example, one main company doing social media in an amazingly well overall, I don't know which one you have, but in my opinion, it would be KLM, for example. KLM for me, out of the whole bubble of content and being creative and amazing to show off, I think KLM is doing the right thing without being too noisy, but doing every single step of the way when it comes to growing their business through social media and digital platforms. And it's actually embracing this change. So to take you through this, how KLM is actually making more profit and creating more loyal customers with this maturity phase, with maturity frameworks. It's actually 77% of margin. You know, those ones are actually businesses who are embracing the maturity models are even more profitable and creating that customer loyalty, customer experience than others. If we see how it's split, the different phases. So you have social beginner as the main phase. This is where mostly of the companies will be at the entry level. And then you have the social brand and social business. This will depend on how many check marks they will do. And I will show you now what are the different steps that they need to take to actually mature in that sense. So you have from planning, the presence, engagement, formalize, strategic, and centralize, converge, sorry. And in this part of the whole maturity phase, you will have the different key areas that you need to look into is divided by 4. So you have the goals. What do you need to actually link to your business goals or business objectives? Which metrics are you going to look into? How do you measure performance? What are your targets? What kind of initiatives, campaigning, activations, and so on, what are you going to do? And how are you going to build this within FTEs and resources internally in your organization? If we look into which are the check marks, I need to go because it's really small, and I believe that digital is not about memory, it's about having the right things in front of you. So I have a big screen here. So what sort of things you need to do in the planning phase, right? So what kind of understanding your customers, what kind of metrics you need to look at, maybe it's about the social listening aspect and understanding what your consumers or your customers, potential customers are talking about. In the listening aspect, or in the initiative aspect, what kind of campaign you want to launch that really resonates with your consumers. And in the organization, what kind of team you're going to need. So this will be the first phase. Once you decide, well, I want to jump into social media, what is that I need to look into? What kind of metrics, goals, people we need, and how I'm going to do this together. And if you go into the different maturity phases, then you have different check marks that you need to start putting. And let's say in the region, the most advanced one, in my opinion as well, is subjective, it will be Emirates Airlines, for example, as doing mostly of them in checking the marks in every single step of the way until they're really into a social business. I don't know if you remember the crisis that happened 2 years ago when the plane crashed in the airport. So from actually the CEO to the cabin crews, no matter where, it was all aligned within social media. It was social media was driving the business because it was where the exposure was getting, right? So press releases out there, controlled by the department, all the different staff were really not given any other comments within the topic of the accident, but just focusing on go to social media and get the information there, because that is where the exposure was getting. So when you embrace social as a business, you actually can tackle the communication that you want to change people's perception. Right? If we look into the social care maturity framework, so this is the theory. I'm going to take you really fast, and it's a case study, so you will see applied into one of the clients that we're working right now. So we work for Daman Insurance, and we just launched, for example, the social care across all channels. If you have Daman, you can just go, they simplify the relationship for you. Because you can go in any channel at any time and just get the support. And it's not just showing off and say, yeah, we have social media there for us to support you better. It's actually real. Because we change completely from the organization. What are the FTEs that they need, but as well the TATs, that is the response time that they need to do within the departments. So it's changing, instead of 15 days to get you a solution on your problem, it's actually a couple of hours. And that was impossible before. We had to actually help them understand what's the benefit of being on social media, being real on social media, not just for the sake of being there. And how that changed the whole perception of the company, that they actually involved from the CEO to all the different C-levels to push every single employee to help us out, us as an agency. So it's changing a company of 400 people to understand that social media, if it's embraced by everybody, all employees, it can really change a brand name or a brand perception to the customers. So it's divided into 4 different stages where you are inactive, you are on social media, but you really don't do much. You have maybe 1 or 2 channels, and pretty much you're there as a passive player. Then you go into the reactive phase when you start engaging. You share some content, you start engaging with the people, but you don't really proactively looking to get more conversations or surprise and delight your customers or your potential customers. If you move to the 3rd phase, you actually start getting more tools, social bakers, for example, not selling you, but it's there, or more listening tools to actually understand the data and those conversations. So you can tackle, in a better way with more information and take a more, let's say, knowledgeable action, right? And then if you go to the predictive side of it, is where you can actually predict what could come. Maybe a trend on your business, maybe it's more R&D that you want to focus on a specific market, but as well as how can I tackle a potential crisis that can come. In this case, I put you the example of Daman. It was a VAT happening in the beginning of this year, and actually they didn't communicate it correctly, and that could really backfire on pretty much any company. It happened quite a lot. So how can a company listening what people are saying the first couple of days of the VAT application, they spotted that the communication that they need to do, it was more sensitive rather than just sending a message to everybody, to all members, saying like, yeah, your package that you paid last year, but it's going to this year, is actually going to go up from January onwards. I don't know if you're Demand, but actually that's what happened. And by doing social listening and predicting that and putting a crisis plan in place, they could actually tackle it in a better way. So at the end of the day, we focus, when we do the consultancy for them or for any of our clients, we focus on 5 key metrics. And it's the goals, the data that we have, the organization and FTEs that we need, the tooling that we're going to need, and actually the channels that we're going to be on it, right? If we see the same, let's say, check marks or steps that we need to take, it's divided as well into those 4 phases and based on those key areas that we need to look into, right? This is our, let's say, roadmap for that maturity phase. But if you want to see the case study, you will see how it's applied. The upcoming maturity frameworks will tackle more or less the same way. Obviously, you have the social intelligence, that is, how do you use tooling to actually understand those conversations? And how do you do community management, for example? What will be the stages that you need to actually, or the steps that you need to take from an outsource to an agency to internalize within your company? And what are the different phases that you need to take to grow up your team and start delivering a one-to-one communication? So I'm going to take you through the case study. Quite, I'm sure you know BATEEL is not that huge company in the world, but it's really well known in the region. And what happens is that people really talk about it. And one of the main things is that you as a brand, you want people to talk about your brand, right? Educate, exposure. Could be through influencers, could be through normal people. But at the end, what you want is exposure. So if we look at how BATEEL right now is in the market, is a social beginner. They don't embrace social media within the organization, but they do a lot of stuff. They're actually positioned way more than Godiva, for example, and Pachi, but it's not really, let's say, a social business or even a social brand. But when it comes to social care, they are in the proactive phase. We try to find people who are potentially our customers, and how can we surprise and delight them, with more a creative approach, rather than just being passive and waiting for them to talk to us. So if we see the different check marks, it's really easy. You put the check marks on the things that they've been doing, and you actually start educating them on the next stages, the next steps that they need to take. So when we go and present this to the, let's say, CEO or C-levels, they have a better vision, better understanding of what the direction that we need to take in order to actually increase performance, increase exposure, have a better ROI on what they do. So one of the main issues that we have in the region is that there's a lot of people who don't believe that social media is, let's say, one of the main digital disruption disciplines in digital. But it's actually the noisiest one, but is where we all are. Everybody knows about it, and is where the customers are. And it's the only way that, it's not the only way, but it's the most, let's say, visual storytelling that we can have to increase that exposure. And if we look into how they do social care, they are much more advanced. They've been, we consider that they move to another phase when they actually accomplish, let's say, 80%, even if they don't have all the check marks, tackled. But in this case, what they're doing is actually really surprising on social care. People come to us, there's complaints about, for example, a chef, or about specific, attendant or waitress. And what we do is actually talk to the different branches and try to, let's say, change that. If that happens in real time, we can actually talk to the branch, and they can go and apologize, for example, directly to that client. We all are individuals that we want, and we have different necessities. And when brands look at social media in a different perspective, not just the basics of sending, a few stories here and there, but building a whole journey, is when actually you create success. So I don't know how I'm good with timing, but in terms of organizational model, it's centralized. They have a main team, well-developed digital skills. Social media is one of the main ones, but they have an outsourced support with an agency, and they build the capabilities to actually deliver what they're preaching on social media. So that's pretty much, and thank you very much.